Good evening, everyone. I'm Avraham Shira. Welcome to the Lighthouse, to a new series we're entitling 10 Windows Onto the Palace. It's a series on Jewish meditation that I've structured in a way that each week we're going to cover a different sense, a different organ, and a different tool for Jewish meditation. So trying to make it very orderly. It's easy to learn, easy to remember, easy to practice. The main thing with this type of work is that it should immediately go into our practice. Rabbi Mordechai Shirabi, the great tzaddik who founded the Yeshiva Nar Shalom in Jerusalem, said that any kavanah you learn, you should do it. Practice it. It's not about how many kavanot you've learned. It's how many you do. So that's connected very much to Jewish meditation because kavanah is essentially aiming the mind. Lechaven means to aim. And so your mind, well, it's like a camera and you aim the camera. And so we're going to look at 10 different disciplines within Jewish meditation. They're going to correspond, of course, to the 5 senses from top to bottom, according to the structure of the primordial man. Call him Adam Rishon. There are other names, but the body of Adam, and that means the body of every one of us, has a structure that corresponds to the tree of life, and the relative sensitivity of spirituality that each person has is built according to this pattern. In other words, we start at the eyes, we go to the ears, and then the nose and the mouth, and then to the skin or our sense of touch, right? And then we go down further the tree as we'll progress through these 10 units or these 10 classes. We're going to touch also, besides each of the senses, we're going to look at using the Torah, the Hebrew letters, as meditation tools. We're going to look at numbers, and numbers are essentially concepts of collections, and not just how much you have in the bank or how much you don't have, or your address on your street, etc. But numbers are also collectors of concepts, and we're going to talk about that in one of the units. And then we're going to talk about colors, because each of the traits in the tree of life has a color. Of course, color is a frequency that's built or based on the speed of the movement of light. We're going to also talk about, at the end of the 10 weeks, the idea of the chariot, the Merkava, which is a very high spiritual idea about transcendence. So the chariot, in the old days, you had a chariot, you hooked up the horse, and away you go. So the experience of riding in a chariot is a metaphor that the rabbis use for transcendence. And we're not talking about going down the street or from the farm to the city, like in ancient days on your chariot, much less going out to battle with Pharaoh and his chariots. No, we're talking about moving from your external self to your internal self, from your physical rootedness in the senses, entering ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper, and there is a sense of travel. There's a sense of movement takes place with the chariot. And then the final week, we're going to talk about the Sefirot themselves, which are essentially an array of God's divine personality. And we each get a piece of that. Each person according to their measure. Some people, every person is different, and some people are strong in certain areas and others in other areas. And that's really based on the idea of the 10 traits of the tree of life. We call them Sefirot. They're energy centers, and they're much more. They're cosmic. They're not bounded by time and space at all. God forbid, because God created these traits to communicate with us. Okay, so that'll be at the end of our series. But tonight we're going to begin with the top of the tree, which is the eyes. Now, like I said, in Kabbalah, there's a progression along the traits of the body that we use. Why do we have these all these senses, our eyes, our ears, our nose, because they are all information collectors. Get this clear. We are here to collect information. Our free choice exists between what information we receive and what we do with it. Now, the 10 traits that we just talked about, corresponding to the human body, we call them in Kabbalah a full span, a koma shlema. There's certain phraseology that we need to learn to be able to share concepts together in an efficient way. Now, this is not a class in Hebrew or nor in Kabbalistic or meditative Hebrew, but I'm going to translate everything I can. If you have questions, please write, chat. If you have insights, also please chat, because your feedback is a big part of what we're doing here. Because this is interactive and we're not just here to give over information. We're here to experience and to share. So tonight and every week, what we'll do is we'll learn a unit on these different aspects of Jewish meditation in the Kabbalah. And then we're going to meditate. And then there's a writing option for people who want to write down what they experienced or saw or felt or heard, etc. And then there'll be a Q&A, a question and answer at the end where everybody will get a chance to share. So usually it almost always goes past 90 minutes, but that's our target time. Okay, so we should also understand in these 10 units, these 10 classes that we're going to go through, there is a pyramidal structure to information. That information starts small and it gets big, or it spreads out, if you will. And it also, by the way, corresponds to the structure or the form of Magen David, what we call the Jewish star back in the old days, right? That you have a pyramid and then you have an upside down pyramid. So these two pyramids represent the movement of energy from above to below and below to above. That the energy down here, we're small people, we're little guys, but we have the ability to create movement above in a very expansive way in heaven. And same thing in heaven, energy, it starts out very small, like a little thought in your brain, and the next thing you know, that idea becomes a mass movement in the human race. So the movement and the expansion of ideas, of thoughts, of intellectual power is part of the structure that we're going to be dealing with. Now, there's an interesting teaching that you might have heard, that anybody who's opened up the Talmud sees in there, Tashma, come and hear. The rabbis, whenever they use Tashma, it means they're introducing a new idea to a particular sugya, a question and answer that's been going on between the rabbis in their argumentation of the halachic ideas in the Talmud. They say, Tashma, come and hear. Here's something new. Here's something different. But you see, it's focusing on the ear here, because we jump over to the Zohar, the famous book of the really the source book of all Kabbalah, and the Zohar says, Tachazeb, come and see. It doesn't say come and hear. It says come and see. Why? What's changed? What's the difference between hearing the rabbis argue something and come and see an idea that's being presented in the Zohar? So this shift in perception is very important, because, well, number one, on our tree, we start at the eyes are the most sensitive, powerful organs we have. They collect the most information per second. They're extremely physically sensitive and vulnerable to pain. The rabbis actually define the eyes as the most valuable organ of all the organs in your body. And so that's why they're at the top of the structure, because they're so important. So there is this relativism between the top and the bottom of the way our bodies are built. The higher you go up the span to your eyes, your head is more valuable or more important than what comes below, your shoulders, etc., your torso. We know that we need a brain to live, and we know we need a heart to live, and we need lungs. But as we come down the span, you'll see there's a definite change in the functionality and the importance. Now, this doesn't just happen in our bodies, it happens in our pursuit of the spiritual experience. And we're going to talk about that more. But when we talk about Tashma, come and hear, versus tachazeh, come and see, what are we talking about really? Is that there's a quantitative shift in the amount of information you can receive with your ears versus what you can receive with your eyes. And in Jewish meditation, we are very interested in what information we receive. Now, of course, the world needs to relax. We need to reduce stress. We need to learn to breathe easy and deep. You know, they've done studies about how much air we use. And generally, a normal human breath uses only about half of your lung, maybe a little bit more. So what happens is a lot of air can collect in the bottom of your lung and not get processed. In other words, removed, new fresh air comes in. So deep breathing is an essential part of obviously of replenishing the oxygen in the body. But that oxygen is food for the cells, for the production of blood, et cetera, et cetera. And when we don't use our whole lung, we're actually starving our bodies a little bit. And we'll talk more about the idea next week when we talk about breathing and about breath. But tonight, we're going to talk about seeing. So the eyes, when the Zohar says tachazeh, it wants you to come and see, because we're going to show you structures. We're going to show you patterns of movement between the head to the torso to the legs, from the right to the left, and diagonally, because there's energy moving all those directions throughout our bodies. So the more you learn about the energy movements in your body, guess what? You learn more about the movement of energy in the entire universe, from the head to the feet, from the right hand to the left hand, and so on and so forth. So this takes time. There's a lot of things, but the general idea here is that the eyes have this ability to receive so much more information quickly. And why do I need more information quickly? Why is that important? Maybe I had enough information for today. You know, my diet calls for 5,000 words an hour, and that's all I can handle. You know, or however many images you could take on YouTube at once. No, it's more like this. The idea of the speed of your information uptake from the reality enhances your perception of reality and enables you to make better judgments. In other words, if I give you a fruit, I close your eyes and you take a fruit, and let's say it's a peach, because peaches are notorious, you know, for going off fast. Right now, you hold the fruit. You're starting to collect information from your fingertips. That's the lowest sense. That's the thing. That's the sense of touch, right? And then maybe you smell the peach. Okay, that's a much higher one. That's already up to your nose, which is the level of, well, in Kabbalah, it's called ma, which is the connector between the eyes and the mouth, between the intellectual processing and its expression through the mouth. There is breath. And the nose is obviously the organ of breath, of breathing, not hearing, right? The ears are on the side of the head for another good reason. We'll get there. But so understand that the eye is so important, because when we get more information, we can make better choices. And in Jewish meditation, when I see things, I want to understand what I'm seeing. That's why you wake up from a dream in the morning and you're like, what was that? You know, what did I see? Why did I see that? Why was it that way? What color? What shape? Who was talking? What was the information? Why that symbol? All these questions. When a prophet would have a prophetic experience in the Bible, he knew instantaneously the perushim, the explanations of his experience. So the par in Hebrew, par means the discrepancy, the distance. For us is that we can have experiences, but we don't know how to interpret them. That's why it's very important. I take this very seriously, by the way. It says twice in Pirkei Avot, Aseh lecha rav, you should have someone you can talk to and share your experiences with as you grow up the tree of the spiritual ladder. That's a double metaphor. As you go up the tree, keep the ladder for later. But the point is that if I'm not able to interpret my experience accurately, I can hurt myself, and I can even hurt others, God forbid. So the interpretation is the ability to understand what's being spoken to you or shown to you in your vision or in your dream. And if I don't have that in place, then I'm lacking my information uptake. So the eyes are especially sensitive to this. And we also know that there is this concept of the inner eye. Now tonight we're going to come to work on we're going to do a meditation to exercise the opening of the inner eye. I see some comments coming in on the chat. That's great. I'm going to stop for those in a moment. So, but the opening of the inner eye is really the first big gate that we need to go through. That when you close your eyes, you actually see. And it's not like you just have a dark room in your head, but the room, we want to open that room. So I call it the inner theater, because when the theater opens in your third eye, it's called, which is of course connected to the pineal gland, which is part of the endocrine system of the body, which is really all the glands that start at the back of the head and work their way down the torso to your reproductive organs, etc. All of that is about the center column of the tree of life, which is really the elevator of energy in a human being. Because the energy, your hands and your feet and your legs and your arms, they receive energy and they give energy back to the middle. But the only way energy can really move is in the center. That's why it's so important to meditate and be centered, because we want to move energy from the top to the bottom. All right, and then of course we want to move energy from the bottom to the top, and that has many ramifications that we'll come to as we progress through these weeks. Now, okay, so understand, Tachazeh means come and see. It means I need to be able to see, and if I don't see, that means I'm locked out of the palace. And this series is called The 10 Windows on the Palace. I want to see inside the palace. I want to see what's going on. Not because I'm a curious kid and I'm bored with my life and I need to check out heaven because it's the best movie in town. Sorry. No, the reason I want to see in the windows is I want to know what God wants from me directly. I don't want to wait around for 20 years to find out why I'm here. I don't want to go. I drove across America in a Chevy van a couple of times looking for God. The classical 1970s or 60s, I should say, cliche of finding God. You get a van and you drive and you hit Route 66 and I-10 and I-95 and the 210 and the 405, I think, in LA. No, those are all fun things to do when you're 19 or 20. But the road ends and you get tired of driving and you want to have some results. So we're here for results. That's in Jewish meditation. It goes way beyond just simply learning how to relax, rest, and pace my breathing. We're going to work on those skills. Those are important skills for all life, every day, wherever you go. But when we sit down to meditate with the Jewish context, we are the children of prophets. We are the children of the children of the children. I don't care how many generations you count back. We have a tradition that is given to us. And I think part of the recognition of a gift is that I want to find, what happens if I give you a gift and you don't open it? You ever see that happen? It doesn't feel too good. You want to see, I give my kid a gift and he doesn't open it. What? You don't want to open it? That's all the fun. The excitement of the giver is to see your excitement in receiving. So God gave us this gift, and if I don't open the gift, I'm telling God, like, okay, I'll get to it, God. Thanks, appreciate it. Later. I'll do the Torah later when I'm 50. No, I'm sorry. That's the wrong response. It's a painful one, by the way. Okay, let's check out some comments. Shimon Fishman writes, like, you can hear all about the color red, but you really understand what red is until you see it. That's right. Very good. Cheryl writes, Rabbi, how can you find out what your dreams mean in today's world? I feel that we lack the knowledge. We do, Cheryl, but we have the books. We have the symbology. This is what's really important when we talk about interpretation, is because we have the 24 books of the Torah. We have the manual of symbols given to us by the rabbis, by Moses, by Abraham. The symbols are there from the beginning in the garden. Now you could say, wait a minute. We have a garden, that's a symbol. We have a spring, oh, that's a symbol. We have a tree, Another symbol, a snake, well, that's a living thing, but it also symbolizes a heck of a lot, right? So I have to understand the symbology, the basic ideas that are behind images. And then when I start to understand those images, I start to be able to interpret things for myself. Now, actually, on my Patreon site, I do offer a dream interpretation service, if you will, like, drive up and deposit your dream and get an interpretation. No, being a little facetious, but the idea, but it's much better. My interest as a teacher and as a student of this material is that all of you have this ability to learn these things. The problem is that the world is much bigger than the 24 books of the Bible in terms of its symbology. And there's all kinds of admixtures of symbols, and there's all kinds of negative symbols, and all types. You notice that every cult has a symbol, and every football team has a symbol, and every corporation has a symbol. It's endless, the number of symbols that are out there. But I want to know the symbols that God uses to communicate with me. I don't care if a Mercedes is like a peace sign with the middle taken out of it, the Toyota sign looks like two like ovals that are interlocking, and who cares? Very nice. It's a Toyota, okay. But I don't see Toyota symbols in my dreams. But I do see trees. I do see geese. Do you know what geese mean? It means if you see a goose in your dream, it means you're going to have wisdom. It's a nice thing, right? If you see a body of water, right, that means you're going to have chesed. If you see, because you know the interrelationship between the concepts and the images, but you only get that from learning and from reading and not just, okay, you can go down to any book. I don't know, are there any more bookstores left out there? I heard Barnes and Noble closed, and then now what do we do? No, you can go right online. You don't have to go to the bookstore. You can get 2,500 different websites telling you about different symbology. Joseph Campbell came out with a book a long time ago about the hero, I believe, in symbols, and he had a lot of insight, and he gave over a lot of stuff. But I still want it to be from the pure goods. I want it to be from the Torah. Okay, so it's about your dedication, Cheryl. Now, anybody, if you all want to write me at RabbiAvrahamShira.com, that's a website. Excuse me, at Gmail. And with a specific question, I'll be happy to try to answer. But I'm really interested in is that you learn, because everybody also has your own private symbology, by the way. Private symbology means I grew up on a farm, so goats and sheep mean a lot more to me than if I grew up on the 75th floor on 3rd Avenue of a building. So those are important things as well. Now, in Masechet Brachot, in the 9th chapter, there is a whole series of dream interpretations according to the wisdom of the rabbis. And it's pretty outrageous. It's not what you think at all. Because most of the time, negative imagery is actually positive, and positive imagery can be very negative. So you have to know how to interpret again. That's why it's called the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the Torah of the master of the mouth, because you learn what the rabbis are teaching us, and I don't just jump out there on my own and give over new ideas because it's cool. No, it's not cool. What's cool is to do what the rabbis have been learning and teaching for thousands of years, because then we're part of this amazing tradition that connects us back to the original symbols and their meanings. Okay, so, let's just say that when I have been asked to interpret people's dreams, it's been helpful to people based on their responses. Okay, now, but it's a gift from Hashem, and it's really Hashem, so we have to know that. Hi, Jules, welcome back to Israel. Hearing allows more to the imagination. Seeing is more specific on a practical level. That's a good point. The imaginative versus the practical. But when I use my eye as a tool of projection, then I'm actually activating what I call the inner artist, the inner, sketcher, because your eye wants to draw things. And what the Kabbalah is telling us, if you're going to draw something in your mind's eye, draw God's name, Yud, K, Vav, K, because that's going to connect you to that primordial source of energy transfer. because we are living in a world of filters from Ein Sof Baruch Hu, the infinite one who has no filters whatsoever, all the way down to the lowest level of the physical, which has the most amount of filters. And so we're traveling amongst those filters. And how do we travel? Through the eyes, chiefly. And that's why it says that in the world to come, that there's no eating and drinking, right? There's the way we get nourishment is through the eyes. And it says that in the end of days, the tzaddikim will nehene miziva shechina. They will have their pleasure from the shining of the divine presence. That's all the food you need when you're only, you're not in your body. Trust me. Okay. We call out to Hashem, Shema, to be more fully connected to. That's true. Well, listen, there's a reason. I think, Jules, that the part of the reason why we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, instead of Yirah Hashem, see God, because everybody can hear, not everybody can see, because not everybody's inner eye is opened. And the external eye is a trickster, the external eye. We're going to talk about that more in a moment. But the external eye is the freest of the organs to receive information. So it goes where it wants to go based on, as the pasuk from King Solomon says, Ayin ro'ah v'lev chomet. The eye sees and the heart wants. Now, Baba Sali, the great Rabbi Yisrael Chatzira, said, well, reverse the phrase and you'll understand it more. Lev chomed v'ayin ro'eh. That when your heart wants something, your eye is led to it, as opposed to the reverse, that you see something and then you want it. A child sees something and he wants it. But an adult, his heart already wants something, his eye goes to find it. And so, part of the discipline of Jewish meditation is controlling our eyes. And it's a very big thing, to controlling the eyes, especially in this world, especially in the summertime. I don't have to say too much more, I don't think. Okay. What books can we learn from? Well, besides the Talmud, which is not so easy for everybody, and you really need to learn that with somebody, you can go to my YouTube channel. I believe the series on dream interpretations is over there. So you just look up Avraham Shira and go to the YouTube channel. I don't want to just throw out names of books because I don't really know many that are outside the Torah discipline. But there are many. What I would do, Cheryl, to get started, to give yourself a kickstart, would be first make a list of all the symbols of the things you see, what comes up in your dreams, and then meditate on them and see what they mean to you. And afterwards, you'll cross-reference and cross-check according to the Bible and other classic sources. I think that's a more interesting way to do it. Okay, the Michael Ben Melech, thanks to him, we're here, and he's continuing hard work of keeping the Lighthouse going. And you should all know it is not a simple thing to keep these platforms up and running and out there for the people. And this is part of the great return, right? The ability to learn these ideas together around the world is just an amazing thing. If you ask somebody 100 years ago about this, they would look at you like you're crazy. Of course, unless you ask Tesla. Tesla predicted all these things, but he wasn't so easy to get to either. Now, notified on daily classes that the Lighthouse is the area, and you can contact Mike by WhatsApp. Okay, there is an amazing book from the late Ari Kaplan called Jewish Meditation, and that is a great book to start. That is true. Dreidel, I like your name, Dreidel. I assume that's your handle, but you've been going around all your life being called Dreidel. It kind of make you dizzy, no? Okay. So we're talking about the eyes, and there's a very interesting teaching about this. It's outrageous. It's like this. We are taught that before the sin, that Adam and Eve, their bodies were like the fingernails. What? The fingernails? Their bodies of fingernails? It doesn't sound very pretty. And of Havdalah, everybody knows you look at the shining of the light off your fingernails. What's going on? Why am I using the fingernail as a metaphor for the body of a soul in hyperspace, gone eight in reality, where he doesn't even have physicality yet? Because the fingernail is a reflector, okay? And the idea of a reflector means that I can receive light. Now we know in the garden, what are we told? That the tree of life, you could eat the bark, you could eat the branches, a couple of leaves, throw on a pear, Why? How can I eat all these things? Because you're not physical. And they all represent gradations of light, gradations of energy that a spiritual being will get nourishment from. If you were suddenly taken out of your body, you would not want food because your body is what wants food. But you would want life force. You would want energy. And for a lot of reasons. But the energy depends, of course, on your ability to receive it. And your ability to receive it depends on my purity from the desire for the lower energies, if you will. Like, food, for example, heavy duty food. I don't know about for the vegetarians out there, but I know anybody who eats meat, how do you feel after you eat meat? It's heavy. Carbohydrates, they're heavy. What's going on? Because the food is dense. So as we go up the tree of life, we're getting less and less and less dense. And we're not talking about just matter. We're talking about the light itself. That's why if you look at the spectrum of a rainbow, you have 7 lights from ultraviolet to infrared. Ultraviolet is much more refined light than infrared in terms of its frequency. And so the energy that is coming out of different colors, we'll talk about more of this on our unit on color. But the idea, of course, is that we can draw power from these things, especially in a meditative state. Okay. So I think Rabbi Kaplan's book is a great book, and I encourage it as well as Dreidel does. But I don't know how much he talks about dream symbology specifically. But I would start out, like I said, first learn your own symbols. Where, what's coming to you. And then you have a starting point that's a good one. Okay, so back to the garden. So Adam has this body of scaly reflectors because that's the way the Torah, the rabbis could give us a metaphoric handle that we could understand 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years later. They didn't have the lashon, they have the lashon of light, but they didn't have words like reflector or opaque glass disc or all the types of fancy language that we've come up with over the last 200 years of the scientific revolution. But the metaphor stands. It works because the idea is that in the garden before the sin, they were not physical beings. And by the way, that's where we're trying to get back to, just like Joni Mitchell said, right? Get back to the garden means get back to my spiritual self, where the body has already been purified and literally put to sleep so that we can rise up. Now, sleep is a metaphor for, or it's actually a tool in the transcendental stage. We'll talk about more about that during the unit on the chariot, I believe. But I will make reference to it over time to time. Now look at this, though. So Adam had this body that was like fingernails that was reflecting light. He shone so brightly, where the Midrash says that none of the animals could look at him. He was so bright. So that sounds like, a pretty, that's like staring at the sun. You can't do it. So what is another Midrash, and all of these are from the Midrash Rabbah on Breshit and the Zohar and Breshit, etc., if you want to look them up. The Zohar says that the snake, that wily fellow, that metaphoric prosecutor, and he has 1,000 other names, his body was a body of eyes. A body of eyes. Now, what does that mean? This guy who's been the nemesis of humanity from day one, his body was all eyes. Think about it. Mashiach now. I like your name. Hayom im bekolo tishmu, Eliyahu Navi told Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Mashiach now. If you want him now, today you have to hear his voice. The body of eyes of the snake is a metaphor for the ultimate ability to receive information from every level of creation. From top to bottom, from the head to the toes. If you are all eyes, you're getting information from everywhere. Now, as I look down here, I have feet, right? How much information are my feet getting? Well, it's a little chilly down there. The mosquitoes kind of, sometimes they migrate down there. How much information am I getting from my feet? Maybe they're smooth, maybe, things like that. That's very limited information down at the level of the feet or your elbow. How much information goes in here? Not much. We already talked about the eyes being the number one information receptor. Now, if your whole body was eyes, do you understand what this snake is all about? He's looking at everybody from everywhere, from every level. And that's why he's a prosecutor. And it's a cold eye. What do they snake? That cliche it almost is. The snake looks with a cold eye. It means there's no mercy there. There's no consideration of context. There's no, who is this person? Why is he doing this? What's happened to him? How did he get there? So the body of eyes is that ultimate judging tool of judgment. And our eyes, we judge very quickly with the eyes. When you hear somebody, you judge according to his voice and what he says, the content, the quality. Maybe you're more sensitive to sound, so you start to pick up on other things in the person's voice. But when we talk about the eyes, it's like an instant flash, right, of information about the person, the way they look, the way they dress, the way they express themselves, their face. There's so many features that you take in automatically at once. The color of their skin. Let's not go there, right? Hey. And so all those details are going into the eye much faster. So therefore we judge quicker. And that's the nature of the snake. Baruch haba, here he is. Welcome. We just called him on his game. So that's why it's very important in meditation. Also, we close our eyes because I want to close down and focus the area that I want to receive information from. Okay. So those two images are very important and powerful images between Adam's body, which is reflecting all the light, and the Satan's body receiving it all, taking it all in and filing his report, like he filed about Job. That was a bad day for Job. When God said to the snake, where have you been? Oh, I've been flying around the earth. Oh, yeah? Have you considered my servant Job? He's righteous. You don't want that to happen. You don't want to be pulled into court in heaven, believe me. Okay. Good night, Shimon. Sleep well. I hope you can catch a recording of this later on Facebook, because we got a lot of work left tonight. How are we doing? Okay, good. We've got another plenty of time. Another idea about the eyes that'll help us. The rabbis say, three things expand the awareness of a person. Now listen to this. Very interesting. It's so obvious, you would think, what? Three things expand awareness of a person. An attractive woman, I guess if you're a man, well, let's not get gender specific. An attractive woman, attractive clothes, kelim na'im, they're called in Hebrew, and bayit yafeh, a beautiful home. Expand your mind. Wow, that's all I have to do. Look at a beautiful woman, get a new suit, and buy a mansion. That's going to expand my das. Actually, yes, it will. The difference, the real difference, listen closely, is that we don't expand the experience of putting on a new suit or a new dress as a spiritual one. We don't define new clothes, a new car. We define it as material excitement. Wow, I got a new car. Check it out, right? I remember 16 when I bought my first car. Oh, yeah, you couldn't sleep. Excited about the silly box on wheels. Okay, you're allowed it when you're 16. But the point is, the rabbis are telling us this expands our knowledge, our das, which is really awareness with knowledge. And with these very, very physical things. Why? Why these very physical things expand our, because we need to expand our minds in order to receive greater knowledge and information from the universe. And that's what meditation is about, being able to expand the mind in order to receive new information, higher information, purer information, obviously from the highest source. So the idea here is very interesting because a woman, of course, the rabbis are men, so they're talking about a woman, but it can work the other way around. The opposite gender, let's say. Then the homosexual people will be offended by that. I can't go there. I'm sorry. A nice house, new clothes, and an attractive human being. How's that? All those things are very material, but there's something about them that operates on our brain on an extremely deep level. What's that something? Well, that something is proportionality. The proportions of a human being's body attracts us. The proportions of your clothes, how they sit on you. If the suit fits good, it makes you look good. If it's too big, you look silly. If it's too tight, you look like you're suffering, right? And a house, well, that's the architect's magic. That he puts together all these boxes and spheres and circles and cones, and it comes out to be a beautiful looking structure that you feel good in the space. Well, you're outside and you're looking at it and it feels good. Why do some skyscrapers are hideous and others are like, wow, that's cool? Well, it's chiefly because of this proportionality of elements. And in Kabbalah, that's called balance, right? And we are programmed with this, right? If you have a woman with manly shoulders, it just, the proportionality is off. And if you have a guy with tiny shoulders, it throws off our sense of why. Those people didn't do anything wrong. They were just born that way. Why is it not attractive to us? Because we're prefigured. It might be genetically. I haven't done the research that deep, but I know aesthetically, it's very clear that this sense of balance is impacting on our das, and that's what expands the mind. So it's the balance that expands the mind. And here we are back to meditation. So of course, the rabbis, they always say 3 things are this, and then they add 4 or 5 more. Because they're collating information from all over. And one of the other places that the rabbis bring for expanding your mind is a beautiful view, a beautiful nof. It's called a nof yafeh, nava, right? The idea is, whether it's the ocean or looking over a valley from a mountaintop, or any view that you find beautiful will expand your knowledge. It's marchiv hadat. It's expanding. Your heart opens, and then your mind thinks better. And this, by the way, is one of the reasons that we are encouraged, like by the Rambam, to gaze on nature. to appreciate nature, to spend time with nature. Because if you look closely at things, you see everything is wondrous. If you just get through the fact that I've looked at that tree 1,000 times already, but if I look close enough, I'm going to see something new, and bingo, the mind opens again. Okay, but I just wanted to add that because the eye is the tool of our reception of the proportionality, the balance. Now, of course, as human beings, we're not all proportioned perfectly. What are we going to do? Go around feeling bad because my shoulders aren't big enough, or because this? No, that's ridiculous. Well, but it's the challenge of all of us is to understand that the real beauty is much greater than that physical shell that we look through. Okay, that the real beauty is the person, is their deeds, and their good deeds, and what they do with their life, and their impact, the positive impact on people, on others, is really how we measure. And even if we're not thinking that way when we see a beautiful person, it doesn't matter. That experience leaves us very quickly. But when you know that someone's done some beautiful deeds for 20 or 30 or 40 years, you're like, wow, I feel good around that person. I know something about them. They spent 40 years feeding the hungry, or healing the sick, or whatever it is. Okay? And the opposite is also true. Okay. Anything more about the eyes? Well, we do have another teaching about the eyes, very interesting. That when babies are born, they start receiving information immediately after birth, but the eyes are the last thing that open. In other words, their skin is first. They sense the touch of the nurse, their mother, right? Whoever's involved in the process. They have a sense of temperature, of moisture, very limited basic things, right? And after touch, they're hearing voices. Of course, most babies are not going to understand when they're born what they're hearing, but they hear sounds. And you can grade the quality of someone's emotions through their sound. Even if you don't understand what they're saying, their tone will reflect a great deal about their emotion. So tone and emotion go together very much. We'll talk about that next week as well. Now, but the eyes are the last thing to open. The mouth opens almost right away. And of course, the nose, the breathing apparatus has got to be working immediately. But the eyes open last because they're the highest on the span. They're the highest. They're the most powerful. Therefore, they open last. And even the Zohar says amazingly like this, that as a baby opens, it's curled up as a fetus. It opens, its feet going one way and the head going the other, and it's expanding. It's literally, the Zohar says, you're expanding the structure of the baby as it opens its body. You're expanding the sphirot. The 10 traits of the tree are, I want to say, I'm not sure that's the right word. Collaborating. That they're collaborating as the body expands, so too the powers of the soul. So it's a very interesting idea if you think about it. That as my body expands, my soul expands. Well, it doesn't feel like that after I eat too much, right? We're not talking about that kind of expansion. We're talking about stretching, about reaching out. That's why you feel good when you do yoga or you stretch, because you're pulling, you're expanding your reach. Literally, in the beginning of Parshat Yitro, there's a whole section, we should learn it sometime, on what I call spiritual body language. It's from the Zohar, and it's all about how your body is expressing spiritual information. That's why we bend down in davening and we stand up in davening. And that's why we step forward and backwards. There's all kinds of little instructions that we take for granted, but they actually have deep ramifications, and including just the lifting of hands, in prayer. Now, so we shouldn't take anything for granted when it comes to our body, because our bodies are conduits of information. And that, like I said before, that's what we're after. Okay, I think we've talked a lot about the eyes, a lot of interesting ideas. I hope they're useful to you. We're going to take a few minutes, not even a minute, 2 minutes, whatever it takes to get comfortable. Turn off your phone, turn off the doorbell, take care of any needs you have. And then we're going to do a little meditation. And I highly encourage to have something to write with, pen and paper, pencil, etc., to jot down notes or anything that comes to mind. Anything that comes to mind. Free association is very important in this process. We have to learn not to edit ourselves, because a lot of times the editor is that guy with all the the snaky guy, you know. Because you get self-conscious and you start thinking about what you're saying and you forget what you're saying. No, you don't want to do that. Editing comes later. So keep a pen and paper handy. I don't recommend using a phone or an electronic device to write with in these types of situations, because we want that spontaneity to just flow through your hand and onto the paper. Okay. So just everybody take a minute or two to do what you need to do, and we will be back. Okay. So let's get comfortable. Now, comfortable in meditation means, again, we're shooting for balance. It's not about assuming a lotus or a salutation to the sun, etc., etc. The idea is that we want to put the body to sleep, because we want to be, as King Solomon said, Ani ishena v'libi er. I'm sleeping, but my heart is awake. And that's a phenomenal meditative experience unto itself, because you realize that you can really sleep and still be awake. And I've read stories about great generals in wartime that were able to sit at a boardroom full of admirals and generals and all kinds of important people that are running a war. It's not a very pleasant metaphor, right? But it's like Eisenhower, these other generals, they would sit there at the head of the table and kind of fall asleep for 3 minutes, but then they'd be completely refreshed. But they could tell you what was said. So that's kind of an important thing if you can do that. Now, you don't want to practice it with your boss. Next time they have a board meeting. Okay. So let's first Sit properly, which means, of course, feet on the floor. Your feet are grounding agents, and our spine, we want it to be straight, but relaxed. It's not military straight, it's just relaxed and straight. Your hands should be free and resting in space or on your lap. They don't need to be touching each other. Our shoulders, we want to let them sink easily into place. Now we begin to breathe through our noses. Meditation is always through the nose, whether we're inhaling or exhaling. As we begin to breathe, each breath gets deeper and slower, more relaxed. Any tension I feel, I just let it go. Usually there's tension in the back of the neck. We just let it go. Your head might nod forward a little bit. That's fine. Actually, you might even be looking over the edge of the well. Our eyes are closed. We're simply observing ourselves. Any thoughts, acknowledge them. Let them go. Any impulses of the body, notice them and let them go. By now you might feel your pulse in your hands or in your feet. That's okay. The pulse is your inner clock ticking. Each breath gets deeper. And each exhalation removes more air. We want to remove as much of the old air from our lungs as we can. Fresh air means the first breath. Now our eyes perhaps you see things with your eyes closed. Maybe it's just a dark room, a dark wall. Or maybe you see flashes off your computer screen through your eyelids. Let's let all of that settle. Because we know about our eyes. They're very smart. They're very quick. They pick up things. They pick up things so fastly, they're gone before we know it. So our first goal this evening is to slow down the mind. Using our breath as the modulator, we slow down the mind by slowing our breathing. We are in a hurry about nothing. There's no such thing as hurry. There is only your own natural pace of thought. Sometimes we think fast, but tonight we want to slow it down. As we slow down our thoughts, the eyes become more awake to consciousness. Think of your inner eye, or eyes for that matter. Think of them as your point of observance, the place you observe from. The place you sit restfully and watch the world of your inner life. Continue breathing. Exhale until it almost hurts. In other words, stop before it hurts. Enjoy your breath. Enjoy it as a cold drink on a hot day, cooling your nasal cavity, cooling your lungs, cooling your blood. The breath does so many good things. It also removes impurities received in the air. It also contains information. Sometimes. Now, as you gaze with your inner eye, perhaps you're having the experience of seeing nothing. That is as it should be. But imagine yourself a prince or princess who has been gone a long time from your father's palace. And you arrive back to the capital city in the middle of the night. And no one is up and about. And you go to the palace. And no one knows you, that you are a prince or a princess. Your father, the king, is inside. and you can't get in. I can't see in to my own house. It might be heartbreaking after so many years away from the palace you grew up in, the pure mind you once inhabited as a child. And so we want to go back in the palace. We don't want to wait all night. We don't want to wait till this night of exile goes on. We want to be in and see our Father and our Mother, the Queen Shekhinah. We want to hold her and be held. But the only way I can go in is through my eyes, gazing, looking for a window, some vantage point to see into the palace. And your heart is breaking with longing to be home again, finally, after all these years, away, far away from our true home, our spiritual home. And so, as always, we turn to prayer. The prayer can be, of course, with your external voice, but there is the prayer of thought, thinking to our Father is praying to Him, if the words are right. At this place of peace, it may be difficult to speak, but we must beg. Open the doors of the palace. Open my inner eye. Let me see what I'm supposed to see. Not too much, not too little, but just what you want me to know today. Open our eyes, Lord. Great God, we are blind. Help me see. Help me see your presence on everything. It is heartbreaking to be outside the palace you once knew as a child. But there is also joy. The joy of the return. The joy of memory, of innocence. The memory of purity, of what we once were, and what we will begin and become again. So let each of us pray that Hashem expand our inner vision and understand what I see and interpret properly, accurately, humbly what it is you wish to show us. Always return to breath. It is your central column. It is your life lived in the breath. Continue breathing, gazing, noticing any details. Understanding there is meaning. Having faith, there is meaning. In what you see and hear. And being humble enough to say, I don't know. But I'm open to receive. There's so many places we can go. So many images to see. Whatever you see, just remember it. Because it's somewhere in your life. Write it down. Perhaps your body begins to feel the motionless stress of not moving. We can begin to return back into our physical selves, but not completely. Being aware if something hurts or something is tight or something is fallen asleep or itches, whatever it might be. Just watch it, experience it. Instead of scratching the itch, observe it. And so on with each impulse. We return on our breath, relaxed, at peace, knowing we have begun, knowing the path is endless. May we be blessed from this moment. May our energies from all over the world come together. Give life to each other. Appreciation, gratitude, wonder, pleasure, delight. Such is a pure soul, with no effort at all. You can give your deepest self when you have been there. Perhaps you're ready to open your eyes, perhaps not, or you already have. Each person, according to his own directive. But returning, opening the eyes is one of the main gates of returning to the physical realm. Stretching now is even greater pleasure. The more aware of our bodies, the more our bodies speak to us. And the more there is to appreciate. Okay. We're here. I hope all of you are here. And if not, that's also okay. We have some time left for questions, chats, or you can talk if you want to open up your microphone. If you have something you'd like to share, that's also fine. Facilitating the meditation oftentimes precludes visual experience because I'm speaking. But this time it was very interesting. I can share that I saw myself pulling myself out of darkness, like I was Yona inside a fish, pulling myself out of a fish. It's very interesting. There's actually verses that relate to that image. I just share that to kind of, be here with you. Oftentimes it's good to partake of something physical after meditation. I have some incense burning here. My handy anti-corona frankincense, which always helps. It's very soothing. It's not one of these sweet smells you get from the meditation shop, It's a very interesting scent, the frankincense, or as it's called in Hebrew, levona. But it's said to activate the pineal gland, which is part of the endocrine system, and that does help open the inner eye. So I recommend that. There are other things that can help. Acacia wood, burning that. Acacia has one of the highest percentages of DMT, which also activates the inner eye. Now, I'm not advocating the use of DMT, God forbid. Drugs are a whole subject, a whole class unto itself that we probably should have eventually. The relationship of meditation and drugs. It's important, certainly nowadays, with the legalization of things and this widespread usage, but not for tonight. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share? It is a bit intimate to speak in this forum about private things. That's why I said you can write me at avrahamshira@gmail. I think it's Rabbi Avraham Shira over there. But I felt a lot of gratitude in that meditation. Eliza writes, I have a question. Why do we have to seek out Hashem? Why doesn't he give us answers without meditating? I'm sorry I'm laughing, Eliza. I like your question. But that's a big question, actually. Why doesn't he give us answers without meditating? Well, Eliza, I don't know anything about you, obviously. Perhaps I'll merit to know more, but if you have children, I think you could understand much easier. Rabbi Nachman talks about your question, actually, now that I remember. I believe it's in a book called Sichot Aran, the Conversations of Rabbi Nachman. And he says, I am so full of Torah, I can't speak to you, Torah, until you ask me a question. In other words, I have to ask the question and able to receive the answer. Does that make sense? If I go to Hashem and just wait for him, he's gonna like say, what do you want? Why are you in line? I got work to do. We have to ask. When I went to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe, they told me, ask. Don't be quiet and just sit there and receive the blessing. Ask for something. Because as the Zohar teaches, when you ask for something, the words of your request actually become the vessels which receive the light of the request. Speech is only a vessel for the essence of what you're after. So you have to ask to create the vessel. I hope that answers your question. Maybe you have other issues with Hashem. For that, we usually do one-on-one coaching. That's a different story. William writes, what is the best time for meditations? That's correct. The best times for meditation, William, and all, are the first thing in the morning and the last thing at night. Or, no, of course, now that I gave you an answer, I have to modify it. Anytime you're alert, anytime you feel the urge. Because, sometimes I post meditations all the time online on other platforms that are designed for that. And they almost always just come, they spring out of my life. If I'm upset, I'll do a meditation about that. And if I'm tired, I'll do a meditation about that. It just, because I get new life from it. I just happen to be at that stage where I can spontaneously talk where I'm at. And I bless all of you for that, because that's really where we should be. I mean, should be is relative, but we're naturally communicating beings. It's only each other that prevent us from communicating, because we're self-conscious and we're afraid, and we're editing and all kinds of things that really block our own process. And it's endless. As a therapist, it's endless when you hear people, and their stories. There's got a lot of good reasons out there not to talk, but we have to talk, especially in this format, because I trust that the people here, that if you get this far to the Lighthouse, then you're a serious person and you're looking for real insight. When I do meditations on Facebook Live, I get some woozies, I get some people from all over the planet writing back things that I wouldn't even repeat. Okay. Hi, Fruma. Yehosheva, what an interesting name, Yehosheva. Never seen that before. Firstly, I can't thank you enough. Well, that's nice, thank you. What did you say besides frankincense to use? Well, acacia wood, which, by the way, folks, it's a fascinating thing. Acacia wood, which is a tree that grows here in the Middle East, is the wood that they used to make the Holy Ark. Moses's box that was covered with gold that held the 10 Commandments. God chose that wood. And that wood happens to have a high concentration of DMT. Now, DMT is a drug that I know people have taken. Clients of mine have taken it. Some have come back okay, some haven't. They call it the death drug. You get to experience dying. I said, you know what? I think I'll wait. Thank you very much. Reb Shlomo Carlebach said, when you fast, you taste little tastes of death when you're fasting. That's already enough for me. But okay, some people, they need the experience, whatever. We're not going to judge that now. But the point is that material, excites something in what we call the pineal gland, which does have direct impact on the third eye, the inner eye, which in Kabbalah is called the Einei HaSeichel, the eyes of the intelligence. And by the way, as we go through each week of the classes, each week we're going to deal with a different sense, and every sense has an inner aspect to it, as well as an external one. So just like you can see outside, you can see inside, you can hear outside, and you can hear inside. Okay. So yeah, those are the two that I know off the top of my head. I imagine if you Google it, you might get more. But I like frankincense because it keeps away all those, those those little virus buddies. Okay. Is anyone had a question would like to share anything? You are able to unmute yourselves now. Thank you, Mike. That's true. If you want to ask, that's fine, or you can write. That's right. We hope Dana to be teaching Thursday nights at this time. It is now a very comfortable 2:35 in the morning, or it depends on which clock I have going here. One time I looked around the house, I had 4 clocks at 4 different times. So, what can you do? It's a time zone problem. Or a battery problem. How about that? Anyways, it's been a very pleasant evening, I think. I've enjoyed this, being with all of you, and I hope you also have benefited. And I want to bless you all with a great Shabbat, a time of peace, rest, contemplation, balance. And the things we started with tonight are basic tools that you can use the rest of your life. And they will lead you to more tools and more perception. And hopefully these classes will provide more and more of that information that you can, put into your everyday service. And whether you're, on a train or on a bus or in your living room or wherever you go, in the park, in your office, close the door, turn off the lights. The idea is to remove as much external stimulus as possible. It's one of the important ideas because that helps to excite our inner senses by not being distracted by the outer ones. Okay? So I thank you all. I thank the Lighthouse, and we'll look for you next week. Be in touch. And wait a second. You know what? I think I have to dedicate this class. I forgot that. Forgive me. But the Lighthouse has to pay some bills. And, you can't send your money to anything better. Let's see. I want to dedicate. Well, we'll dedicate this class to a couple of ladies that I have gone to the next world, Rachel Fega, Bat Menachem Mendel, and Joyce Bat Menachem Mendel, that they should receive from these teachings and from the Torah of Hashem. It's one of the perks you get when you go to heaven. You get to go to a special class. So there's what to look forward to up and below and above. And we'll look for you next week. God bless you all. Shabbat Shalom.